What's up, everybody? Welcome to this live stream. I'm so excited today. It feels good to be live again. It feels good to be on LinkedIn with you. It feels good to be on YouTube with you. It feels great to be on Facebook with you. So, if you are joining me for a live stream today and you are watching live, say hi in the comments. I want to see you. I want to hear you. Say hello. I am going to be really dropping some gems today. So if you have not said hi in the comments, say hello so I can see you and know that you are here because today is about to be thebomb.com. All right. So first things first. Welcome to everyone who is joining us live. If you are watching the replay, don't hesitate to say hi and just drop hashtag replay in the comments so that I know that you are watching our replay with us so that I can pop in the comments and say hi to you. All right. So, you guys, I'm so excited. If you're just now kind of getting in and getting acclimated, don't be afraid to tell us where you are joining from. So, tell me, where are you joining us from? And just in case you have not met me before, my name is Crystal Clark. I am a workflow strategist. I help service based creatives to organize their back office with systems and workflows so that they can stress less inside of the office and live more life outside of it. And so today we are going to be talking all about 4 ways to enforce boundaries with clients. So if you've been struggling with scope creep, if you've been struggling with clients texting you all kind of nights, if you've been dealing with, all kinds of drama and hoopla and issues and problems and bumped heads and hurt feelings, we're going to talk about some ways not only to prevent that from even coming up, but how to handle it when those issues do arise. Because let's be honest, everyone's like, you should have boundaries. You should have boundaries. All the big gurus are like, make sure you have boundaries, but no one's really talking about how to enforce those boundaries and what happens when things get a little bit like awkward and you're too like nervous or scared or feel too awkward to enforce that boundary, so you say nothing at all and then clients continue to overstep. And so we're going to talk about ways to overcome that today. All right. So it looks like we got some people chiming in from NYC, New Mexico. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now let's go ahead and jump right on in. You may be wondering, okay, Crystal, go ahead and get to the nitty gritty. What are those details? What are those ways? What are those things? Right. And so, first and foremost, we want to talk about education and not just enforcement, right? Maintaining healthy boundaries is both a mix of education and enforcement. Okay. So there is both. Both are required to not only create healthy boundaries, but to maintain them. And before I get into the 4 ways to enforce them properly, what we want to make sure is that we've made an effort to actually create our boundaries. If you're not sure how to do that, I'm going to explain that to you now. And so, the best way to enforce your boundary or to create boundaries for the very first iteration, before you can educate a client on what your boundaries are and before you can enforce them, you have to create them. And the best way to start with that is when you draft and craft your offering, right? So your service offerings are going to give you a good idea of what items you need to include or what boundaries you may want to include. Because, for instance, if you're a graphic or web designer or brand designer and you have a situation where you only allow X number of revisions and you require the clients respond to those requests for revisions within X amount of time, then that needs to become a boundary that's set or a policy that you have in your business. If you have a situation where you're heavily always like on a lot of calls and your service requires calls, like what are your boundaries around people showing up late, not showing up on time, standing you up? What are your boundaries on response times and communication? Do you want people texting you all times of night? Do you want people DMing you on Instagram asking you to make a revision? Probably not. So you need to go ahead and craft what your boundaries and policies and procedures for your business are going to be as you craft your offer, so you can have clarity about that. All right. So you have something to educate clients about. Otherwise, you're just kind of pulling things out of the sky on what you heard other people say a healthy boundary should be. But really, your boundaries are all wrapped up. Literally everything in your business, down to your marketing plan, your process and workflows, the email templates you need. Almost everything in your business is surrounded around your service offerings, your boundaries and policies and procedures included. And so as you craft those offers, be sure to kind of jot down notes to the side. Hey, like these are situations I don't want to deal with. So I need to make sure that I address, like, if this happens, these are going to be the consequences. I'm going to do this, but if you don't, this is what's going to happen. Right. So let's get into the 4 ways, starting with number one. And that first way, and I'll scoot to the side so I'm not in your way, is going to be your contract terms. I know this may seem a little bit predictable, but you need to make sure that the same boundaries that you're saying, hey, I have a 2-day response time, or I can get back to you in 2 days, make sure you account for that and document in your contract those same policies and boundaries. Because if it's not in writing, we have nothing to go back to. I am a avid user of my contract. If something is not in alignment and I have to remind a client about boundaries and things that I have set forth, I will refer to my contract terms. So first off, if we look at the education side of maintaining healthy boundaries, then we can educate clients about our boundaries through our contracts when they sign our contracts. And I know what you're going to say. Yes, but Crystal, I send them a welcome guide. Okay, that's not enough. You have to have them sign off on them. If they're not signing off, it's quick and easy for people to get amnesia, all right, about what you said or what your policy and what your boundaries are. So establish that from the beginning. Go ahead and put those terms or those boundaries and policies you want to develop for your boundaries inside of your contract. Okay. Now, if you're sending out a welcome guide, that's all well and fine. If you're sending out a detailed project guide, whatever you call that document that you send when clients book you, great. But here's what I find in that. Clients are not reading them. They don't have time. They're busy. They're strapped for time. Obviously, they're hiring us as service providers because they don't have time to do the thing that they're hiring us to do, which means they probably also don't have time to sit down and read a lengthy welcome guide while also filling out your questionnaire, while also looking through all your welcome guide materials. And I'm literally saying that from the standpoint of the client and customer, because we don't account for that. All we account for is what we want them to know and what we want them to do. And we don't take into account what that experience may feel like and how overwhelming that may be, especially in the thought process of your offerings being really high, high ticket. And so if you have high ticket offers, think about, you just dumped all this homework on a person and you didn't give them an opportunity to get acclimated. And so then that's what's going to lead me into number two, which is going to be kickoff. Are you kicking off your projects with a kickoff call and reinforcing the education of your boundaries during a kickoff call? Newsflash, I no longer send welcome guides. And I'll give you my reason why. It's because I do kickoff calls now. So instead of sending a lengthy questionnaire to my client, instead of sending a lengthy welcome guide to my client, I actually educate them on everything and remind them about everything during a project kickoff call. So we'll start the project. We'll start the project start date, and their project start date starts with that kickoff call. It's 90 minutes. We spend in 30 minutes going over my most important policies, procedures, and boundaries. And then from there, I will also cover things like, what to expect during each phase of their project, what to expect at each milestone of their project, because there may be some key events, milestones, meetings, things throughout the project that may come up, and I want them to be aware of that. I may also want to educate them about other things in the project that I expect from them next, stuff like that. Now, in complete transparency, and I'll just drop a little nugget here, I will be hosting a workshop next Thursday, all about the project kickoff call process, how I handle it, exactly what I include, the slides that I create. I'll even give you a copy of those slides so you can customize them to your brand, so you have everything ready to go for your project kickoff call if you'd like to integrate that into your process. Ever since I've been doing kickoff calls, it has made the world of difference. I feel like people don't get like, hey, I didn't know what was next. Even though, guys, you're sending next steps in your emails or advising clients in the next step email, what is next and what is required of them and what happens next, there's still a little bit of it's like reading a long blog post versus watching a video. You know what I mean? If I can go on YouTube, watch a quick video instead of having to read a long blog post with screenshots and try to make sense of something, it hits home and sticks a little bit better. And so by me making things uh easy to understand in all three learning styles for my clients: visual through my contract terms that they sign off on, auditory and visual through my kickoff call, and sometimes kinesthetic when it comes to actually like filling things out and confirming and checking boxes that they understand. So I use all three learning styles throughout my client experience so clients can actually let all the information I'm giving them sink in. Otherwise, again, you have the opportunity for amnesia to arise in your project. So we want to make sure that we're doing that effectively. So I'm going to just check out the chat real quick. It doesn't look like we have any questions, but if you do have any questions, feel free to put a Q in front of your question so that I know your comment is a question and not a general comment. All right, so going back to our topic, project kickoff calls, I would have to say, are the most dynamic way to pre-enforce or reinforce the boundaries that you mentioned in your contract terms. Reason being is because if I'm visual and I'm talking to my client, I can gauge their receipt of that information with head nods and okays and any questions that they may have for clarity for me. Right. So now let's talk about number 3, y'all. I'm not going to hold y'all long. I told y'all today's message is going to be easy. Right now, if we go on to number 3 and we talk about milestone reminders. Now, remember, I talked a little bit earlier about there may be key events, milestones, meeting, calls, key milestones where you may be delivering materials and things. That is also very important throughout the process. So you may have some situations where if you have an upcoming meeting or upcoming call, or if you're delivering a resource to the client or a file to the client, and there are boundaries associated with that, meaning if I need to go and send my client a reminder, a file, say like for review and approval, there may be an instance where I may decide, hey, this item that I need you to review needs to be reviewed within the next 14 days per our contract terms. Okay. Per our contract term. Pull that right on out. Okay. That's also number 4, which is responding and reinforcing with quotes. So I would kind of put number 3 and 4 together, but they're a little bit different. So, like if you have an upcoming call or you've been sending out an item for review, make sure that your workflows have that verbiage in it, almost like prevent the situation from happening. Meaning, if I send out like a workflow flow chart to a client, which I do. I'll map out their workflows. I'll send them an item for review. And I'm saying, here's your strategy that I've put together for your systems. I've mapped out your workflows. I've figured out what assets you need at every step, what emails, what forms, what proposals, what contracts, what questionnaires, with all the things. I have, figured out what software you need. Here's your strategy. Here's a video to review it and understand it. You can review that at your own convenience, but I need you to respond in 14 days. Per our contract, if I don't have an approval or any notification from you in 14 days, unfortunately, our project will be terminated without refund. Because see, what's going to happen is these people will drag a project out, and even though they don't intend to be difficult to work with or whatever, or you don't even intend to be mean or rude by enforcing your boundaries, what can happen is your project just continues to just go out to eternity. It never ends, right? Because they get busy, their kid got sick, something happened, and it prevents them. So if people don't know, and they're not reminded, hey, I need this by this time to keep your project on time. Otherwise, I'll either have to terminate the project due to non-responsiveness or a violation of what I call my collaborative commitment, or I'm going to have to push your project date out to another date so that your overlap of project doesn't affect my other client projects. And in some cases that requires a project restart fee of $2,000 or $1,000 or $500, whatever you want to put there. But that allows the client to know, all right, She sent me X. She said I needed to have it by Y. And if I don't give it to her by Y, Z is going to happen to me. I'm going to have to pay out some money, or I'm going to have to do this. And then when that situation comes up that they didn't execute as they agreed to in your contract terms, as you discussed on your project kickoff call, as you reminded them when you sent the item for review, then when you enforce that boundary and say, hey, unfortunately, I'm going to have to terminate the project, or unfortunately, your project date is going to have to move back because I won't be able to complete in the allotted times because I can't rush now that you're ready all of a sudden, right? I can't rush now that you're ready all of a sudden. I understand you had all these things going on. I understand you had some other responsibilities. I even understand life just happens. But unfortunately, I can't allow what has happened with this scenario to go and then impact other client projects. And then I have to put those clients on hold, and they've done what they're supposed to do on time to accommodate you at the last minute and hurry up and get you your stuff. It can't work like that, right? So it has to be a good balance and a good, healthy balance. And so when you go and then reinforce and enforce that boundary and say, hey, unfortunately, we'll have to push your project start date back, or we'll have to push your project completion date back, and this will cause a fee of some sort. And then if they give pushback, they technically can't give pushback because they've seen it, they've heard it and seen it, they checked it off, they got an email notification about it, even reminders, and then you responded. Now, if someone responds back and say, hey, I didn't know, then that's number 4. And that is responding with pull quotes directly from your contract terms. Go get your contract terms and be like, all right, per our contract that you signed, it states this. And be firm. Y'all, getting scared and not wanting to say nothing is going to keep you in this loop of burnout and scope creep and dealing with all people issues. And while we love our clients, we love the work we do for them, we love the transformations and results that we help them to achieve, we can't be constantly in a situation where we're allowing, you know, people to run over us because we're too scared to enforce the boundaries. So, just as a quick recap, 1, update your contract terms. Make sure that your boundaries that you want to set forth are put within that contract terms. And then also don't be afraid to not be accessible in certain ways. If you're afraid that people are going to be mad that they can't text you, or you're tired of people texting you at all times of day and night, baby, don't give them your cell phone number. Okay? Don't do it. If you give them the cell phone number, they're going to use it. All right? Is that better? Hope my face isn't covered. I think I'm on the left-hand side. It's on that side. But I just kind of get the impression that people are having issues with clients not standing by the boundaries, but then they go back and backtrack and let people go through and make exceptions and give them their cell phone numbers and do all these things. And you end up not having what you need. Other way? Okay. I'm on like 3 different streaming platforms. So what we'll do is we will take it off. All right. And just put that back up. All right. So basically what happens is if you allow people to continue to overstep, if you make exceptions, if you bow down and you become a yes man and you say yes to everything, guess what people are going to do? They're going to overstep your boundaries, and you cannot allow that. What happens when you cause this to consistently happen? Overstepping of boundaries, being too scared to enforce them. Imposter syndrome creeps in because you feel like, oh, I'm not cut out to be a business owner because I can't even enforce my boundaries. Or then the scope creeps in, and then the project that was supposed to be 3 months turns into 6 months, or the project that was supposed to be 6 months turns into a year because clients aren't doing what they're supposed to do. They're not being respectful of the boundaries that you've set in place. And let's be honest, it's no fault of our own if we don't put our foot down. So you have to put your foot down and go at it with confidence. Remember, there's no sense in having a contract if you're not going to enforce it. Any lawyer will tell you that. Yeah, you can pay me thousands of dollars to craft this this agreement, but if you don't enforce it and you don't stand by it, what do we have it for? You might as well not even have people sign it if you're not going to enforce it. And so go ahead and make sure that you're enforcing things. Go ahead and make sure that you're doing the work to update your workflows. Because like I said, when you go into the process of really and truly understanding your service offerings and how they flow and how they work and what you're going to do, and how you're going to handle certain situations, and you put that in your contract, clients got to sign off before they pay you to work with you. And so then when you kick off and onboard them with your project kickoff call, and you walk them through everything that they need to expect and know and be up to date on, you can get them nods and yeses in addition to them signing off. And then in your workflow, like I said, integrate reminders of certain boundaries and policies as you deliver, as you send reminders for appointments. Again, like for example, I have a very strict attendance policy for my meetings. Like, don't waste my time. Like, I'm already strapped for time. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a business owner. There's a lot that is going on. There are lots of moving parts. And so I don't want to be in a situation where, I'm supposed to be on calls with a client and they keep standing me up and not showing up. And so my policy is, if I've been sitting here waiting for you 5 minutes and you're not here, I got other calls. I have set call days. My Mondays and Tuesdays are set calls days, and I have calls stacked throughout the day. If you're 20 minutes late, then you just encroached on someone else's time, and we can't have that, right? Because would you want someone else to be running late and then encroach on your time that you have with me dedicated that you paid for? Probably not, right? So we want to make sure that we establish those boundaries and put those enforcements down. So that may mean taking a look at your workflows and your reminders and your policies that say, do I have a reminder about my 5 minutes late attendance policy in my upcoming meeting reminder emails, your 24-hour reminder email, your 1 hour reminder email. I even have an email that goes out when the meeting is supposed to start that says, hey, I'm logged in, ready for the meeting to start right now. Remember, if you're running late, I can only wait for you for 5 minutes. After that, you got to reschedule, right? And that's not trying to be mean. It's establishing boundaries, because let's be real. People hire you, they throw money at the problem that they face, and they just want it fixed. And sometimes they're so busy that they're not paying attention to how we work, and we have to do those gentle reminders to remind them. And so what you do is you educate and you reinforce, so that when it does come to an essence of enforcement, that person has been told, reminded, visualized, signed off on 11 times before they get to you needing to enforce. And then when you do enforce, just be confident. Don't backtrack. Don't be trying to be like, well, usually I do this, but for you, I'll just let it slide. Nope. If you let that slide, they're going to be expecting you to let other things slide. I want you to think back to every time in your business or every time in your personal life where you've made an exception. It's almost never been a pleasant outcome, or it's almost never been a pleasant experience. And that just kind of goes to show that sometimes we just can't make exceptions. So let's go ahead and jump on with questions. Do we have any questions in the room, you guys? Q&A is open. So if you want to ask some questions, Q&A is open. Go ahead and put the Q at the front of your comment and ask your question, and I will be happy to answer them for you. As we wait, just don't forget that if you'd like to participate in our upcoming workshop next Thursday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be hosting a Project Kickoff Call Toolkit workshop, where I will be giving you a Project Kickoff Call Toolkit with a Project Kickoff Call slides for Canva that are customizable, as well as email templates that you need to infuse into that Project Kickoff Call process when you're setting up the appointment type for your Project Kickoff Call, so everything is in alignment with what needs to happen to prepare the client effectively for that meeting. And we'll also talk about some best practices so you can limit the amount of overwhelm or client homework that your client feels that they're maybe having to deal with at the beginning of your project, to make things just a little bit easy for them. So if you'd like to do that, just go ahead and visit organizeyourempire.com, and I'll be happy to welcome you, and you'll be able to register there. All right. Are there any questions at this time? Looks like we have a couple people talking about some boundaries. Shalene says boundaries are the key to kicking burnout to the curb. Love this. Untouched Focus says, I've had a hard time enforcing it myself? Is there a better way to enforce them other than emails? The other way, like I said, the only way to really enforce a boundary is to communicate with the client. If you need to hop on a call with the client and chat with them about it, chat with them about it. I think sometimes, depending on your tone, in an email, someone can't understand your tone or how you're saying something or what tone you said it with. So it's easy to get the expectation that something may be come across offensive or disrespectful to someone in the way that we may write things. So there's no harm in saying, hey, is it okay if we jump on a quick call and discuss this if an email it doesn't work for you? And in the same regard, it's healthy and okay if you want to pull up that contract that they signed and remind them of the policy and procedure. No one can be off put by their own signature. Right? And that's why, like, on a lot of policies that are very important to me, I will put initial areas, so they have to initial next to it that they, understand it and things like that. But there is a better way. If including it in emails, like I said, if you put it in the right place as milestones come up, as you deliver things, remind. As you have upcoming meetings, remind in respect to the policy that is associated with that part of your project. If I tell my clients, I will not continue working on your project and set up your systems until you approve the strategy that I've sent you, I will not be working on building a single thing out until they've accepted the strategy that I sent them. Then, if that strategy that I've sent them, and I've sent them several reminder emails, after the second email, I will say, hey, it's customary that after 14 days of non responsiveness to you in an effort for me to try to get items approved so I can set up your systems for you and complete deliverables, I have the right to terminate the project without refund and move on. Or you have the option to pay me X amount of dollars because now the extra work I'm going to have to do, the extra calls I'm going to have to walk through, the extra things, it's y'all, it will snowball so fast. That scope creep. It will be like the clients aren't asking for extra things. Sometimes they do, right? But it'll get out of hand very quickly if you keep allowing things. You know what I mean? And so you have to just put your foot down and say, this is what's going to happen if you don't do this. This is what, listen, 14 days, you got 2 weeks to respond, or you got X number of days to respond to this. If I don't get this response, unfortunately, if this is late, that's going to incur this amount of fee, and this is what's going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with communicating that and being nice about that. Even if you put a cute little banner, with a little star, that means like policy alert or um, important info. Hey, your response is needed by blah blah date. If response is not needed per our contract terms, this is the outcome as a result. One of my best friends in the world, Ricky Tijani, attorney Ricky Tijani, she's awesome, a firm for the culture. She told me, she was like, listen, your contract terms, be like, all right, this is what we gonna do. This is what I'm gonna do. And this is what happens if this don't happen, if X don't come together, right? Because you have to put those enforcements in place to do what needs to be done and don't be letting people run over you. All right. So Latoya said, "Oh, that was me letting stuff slide, but not anymore." Yeah, you cannot let people do it, right? So, do we have any questions? Are there any situations and certain boundaries that those of you have been like afraid to talk about or confront? If so, go ahead and put that in the comments with a Q or a quick comment, and I'll be happy to address it for you. All right. No, no, no. All right, so I'm going to drop a quick link inside of the chat real quick for those of you who are interested in joining us, or joining me rather, for the Project Kickoff Call workshop next week. Again, it's going to be next Thursday. And we're going to be really like knocking things out of the park next week. I don't think you guys are prepared for how thorough I am in these workshops. And workshops with me aren't just about learning, it's about doing. I am someone who likes to teach and give you time to implement at the same time. So there will be co-working time during the workshop for you to implement what you've learned and update and customize the templates that you've learned about or will be provided with. So I went ahead and I dropped the links for you guys on all 3 platforms. So you have the ability to go ahead and access those as is needed. All right, so let's go to our chat. Martha says, I have a client who is continually late to our calls, anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes. And I usually play it off and say, no worries, but it's very frustrating. All right, it looks like that if you're afraid or feel a little bit awkward to have that conversation in person or during your call, then what will need to happen is you'll just need to send a friendly email afterwards and say, hey, thank you so much. And sandwich method that thing. All right. Positive, bad news, positive, right? Sandwich method. And you just respond and say, hey, just want to check in with you. I've noticed, you've been, having some struggles getting to our calls on time. And I want to be able to fully maximize the time we have together to really get the best results with you. Is there anything that I can do to support you in those efforts? And just want to remind you of our policy. State the policy. Go pull the quote, form your contract terms, plug it in the email, and say if there's anything that I can do to support you and help you to make it to our appointments on time so we can use our time wisely, that would be awesome. Another way to enforce that boundary, number 2, is to simply go ahead and then exit the call, right? Hey, I have back-to-back calls today, and unfortunately, due to tardiness, I won't be able to continue today because the time that we've allotted will spill over into another client's time. And so since we do have back-to-back calls today, we'll have to reschedule. Now, do you also have a backup policy to rescheduling? Yes, I do. I have a backup policy to rescheduling that says a client can only reschedule a certain type of call once. So if that rescheduling has to happen due to you being late, being MIA, not showing up on time, there's a fee associated with that too. Think about it, guys. When you put money onto something, it forces you to do what you're supposed to do. If it's going to cost you more money, it's going to force you to do what you're supposed to do. And so, again, if you put in the reminder emails of those appointments, Marta, and you say, hey, we're looking forward to meeting with you. Our appointment starts in 1 hour. Remember, my attendance policy for meetings is I will wait for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes has passed, I will be removing myself from the call because we do have back-to-back calls on our call days, and our call time with you will spill over into another person's time. And in an effort to maximize our time together, we like our clients to be on time so we can get you the best results. If you need to reschedule, you can reschedule here, but you can only reschedule once. After you've rescheduled once, that will have a $50 fee or however many dollar fee you want to entail. And I think what will happen is that will precursor letting the client know prior to the call, this is what's going to happen if you're late. Then if I enforce that boundary later and send you an email after the fact, even if I decide, and guess what, you still get to make an exception if you want to. If I decide I want to continue with that call, but I still feel some type of way afterwards, I can send a nice friendly email and say, hey, I just want to reach out with a friendly reminder about our attendance policy. I've noticed you've been a little tardy to several of our most recent calls, and I really want to do a good job for you, and I really want to get the best results for you. And one of the best ways we can do that is by maximizing our time together. There's nothing wrong with that, Marta. People won't be offended. And those who are, guess what you get to do? You get to have policies and boundaries in place around being, treated a certain way in your contract and being able to enforce termination if you need to. And if it's just simply not the right fit, it's simply not the right fit. It doesn't matter how much we try to enforce a boundary. If a person is not going to be, respectful of your time or considerate and working with the service provider, then there's just simply nothing you can do other than terminate and part ways amicably. I can't always say that word correctly, and respectfully. There's nothing wrong with this, a respectful termination. All right. Then Marta says, what would be a good way to let her know it's not okay now that it's become the norm? I think I answered it already, but I would say just send a friendly email and say, hey, I just want to reach out with a quick concern, and just let her know of whatever policy you put in place. Or if you do not have that policy put in place, there's nothing wrong with sending a contract addendum policy for your clients to sign and say, hey, going forward, we have just like I think it was like QuickBooks and Sign Now and a couple other companies. I think several times a year, all these companies send us emails with like, here's an update of our terms and conditions. You're welcome to not work with us and access our resources and services if you don't agree with them. If so, let us know. And they update their terms and conditions and send that out in a mass email for everybody to be notified about. So if you don't want that person to be singled out in a one-on-one email, do it that way. All right. Okay. We have another comment. My clients are always pushing timelines out. Projects take way longer than they should, always. Thank you for joining us from LinkedIn, Janelle. And I think that's just a standpoint of we need to make sure we're reminding. Like, seriously, I'm telling my clients every day, I will not continue with your project unless I have this. And then when you do decide that you want to come back and do this, I won't be able to just pick it up out of the blue and finish it in a week. I won't be able to do that because the work that I do is very detailed and thoughtful. Y'all think about all these boundaries and policies and procedures and workflows and reminders and checkpoints to put things in certain places. Like, I have to go through all of this stuff with a fine tooth comb and make sure certain things are in there for my clients based upon what they need in their workflows. And that takes time. Even though I'm really good at it, it's still time consuming for me and tedious. And so I still have to make sure that I put the effort of reminding the client at certain intervals. If I have a project kickoff call, I'm going to say, hey, our project kickoff call is coming up. Hey, don't forget about our attendance policy. I can only wait for you for 5 minutes. If we have to reschedule this call and your project start date now has to be rescheduled as a result of you not sticking to our call times and things that we've agreed to, then unfortunately that's going to come with a fee. Now, if there's a car accident or a kid is sick or something crazy has happened, I'm not going to force someone to pay me $300 to start their project over, right? I might make an exception, but the next time I might stand to that boundary, but I'm making sure that those policies and procedures and friendly reminders of those policies and procedures are in upcoming reminder emails for appointments. They're in delivery emails for things that I'm delivering throughout the project, and that it's okay for me to craft a nice, fancy, but friendly policy. When in doubt and you're afraid to write it, you have a nice friend named ChatGPT where you can copy your policy out of your contract, put it in ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, can you craft a nice email to my client to give them a friendly reminder about this policy? Here's the policy, right? And ChatGPT can help us out, right? And then Janelle also says, I always adjust, but it does impact other projects. I have yet to have a project complete on time. And Janelle, that's not always our fault as a service provider. Sometimes the clients can be late on giving us questionnaire responses. Sometimes clients can be late on giving us the things we need. And so I've kind of even been experimenting on in my projects to say, what would it look like if I didn't send a client a questionnaire? What would it look like if I just did my project kickoff call with them, re-walked them through my policies and boundaries, and I actually completed the questionnaire for them, interview style? That way, I can explain what I'm looking for. I don't have to make 50 Loom videos to explain how to fill out the form and what I need, what I'm asking for certain questions. I can interview them. I can give them follow-up questions. I can type it out in the exact format that I want it to be in. And then the client feels like they didn't have to do anything, like they paid someone and I actually truly took it over. Like, I'm really enjoying doing that as per the past where I had this long lengthy questionnaire and I'm like, I need all of this before we can start. I kind of want to prevent delays in the project from the beginning. But that could be real talk. That could be like a whole nother live stream. That could be a whole workshop within itself, of different things I send and give and reinforce to prevent projects from going out, because I have a couple projects right now where I'm still finishing them up from a previous year because client couldn't meet. They've had 11 things come up and the call gets pushed back, or they haven't approved something, or for whatever reason. And what it did is it just reminded me, at the first of the year, like, "Hey, Crystal, you really got to like go back and fine tune some of these things. Where can we input little nuggets and reminders to keep the project running on time?" And the best way to keep the project running on time is to remind the client, you will not get your deliverables on time if you don't get me this questionnaire on time, if you don't show up to the calls that we've planned for certain dates and times. If that call gets pushed back a week, then your project end date gets pushed back a week. It's as simple as that. We can't put ourselves under unnecessary stress trying to hurry up and get a project done because the client's all of a sudden ready, or all of a sudden, and we also need to look inward and say, are we that way as clients to other service providers? Ouch. I know. Bee sting, right? So we got to also consider how we are as service providers. A lot of times, if I know if I'm under stress, or I got a lot of big projects going on, or I got a lot of things, I sometimes won't even hire a service provider to do something because I know that I don't have the time and energy to dedicate to the collaborative commitment that they may have. And so just be mindful of that. In the Project Kickoff Call workshop, anyone who signs up in the next 48 hours and joins me for the Project Kickoff Call workshop, I am going to give you my Balanced Boundaries guide. It is multiple pages. It has boundary creation exercises in it, as well as my exact verbiage from my contract for some of my like really, 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 really like dear to me boundaries that I like to include in my contract. And that is included as a bonus when you sign up in the next 48 hours. So I just want to give you guys that info. And remember, you can visit crystalclarkcreative.com/shop if you want access to register for that workshop. Everything is affordable. Nothing's over $100. Go for it. You'll enjoy it. You'll love it. All right. So I just want to say thank you, everyone. I don't see any more questions here in the chat. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who have spent time with me today, who have taken time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate the opportunity to inspire you and drop these fantastic gems. Make sure you are visiting my website regularly, because there will be lots of free upcoming events and live streams just like this one on other awesome topics that you need to organize your back office and manage clients with more ease. I hope that everyone has had a great experience, and I'll see you next time. Bye.